Okay.
I'm waiting.
Du-du-du. And we are live. We are live. We are live. We're going to give them about a minute to come in, and we're going to probably go over a minute or two into the lunch periods. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. All right, y'all. Come on in. Come on in. You should be able to come on in now. There we go.
I apologize in advance for any background noise. I live in the beautiful New York City,
Oh, totally
and
understand.
and
There we go.
the windows are open, so I don't know. I tried to back knock it out, but it's not working for me.
Okay, so if you could come in the chat and say hello, make sure you're here. Want to make sure that we're running on the YouTube side. There we go. I see Dawn, LD, Melissa, hello. Okay, we're going to get started. We're going to go 4 minutes into lunch, and I think you guys are okay with that. I'm just going to say that. So let's get started. I would like to introduce our next speaker. And let me pull up her information. This is the amazing S. Michelle Eccles. She is a New York City public school librarian. So happy to have her with us, and she has a very interesting background, which I think you will be so interested to hear. So, from the great state of New York, I now present to you S. Michelle Eccles, and I'm going to disappear. Okay,
You're gonna just
Michelle?
all right, Casey. Thank you so much for having me. Welcome, 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 everyone. I'm so excited to be here today to tell you how I have used grit and resiliency this year. I am a first year school librarian, but getting into this grit and resiliency, I don't know. In the chat, type in for me how many people really truly understand what grit is. Give me a one if you really understand what using grit is, and give me a two if you're a little unsure, have some unclearness with it. So let's go. Let it rip in the chat. A one if you truly know what grit is, and a two if you have a basic understanding of what grit is and how we apply it to our lives. All right, I got some twos coming. All right. So everyone here, okay, I have a one. Okay. All right, there we go. Thank you everyone for participating in the Chatterfall with me. So, who am I? I am Sandra Michelle Eccles. I have been a public librarian where I started my career off working at Queensborough Public Library. As the young lady was saying beforehand, the field of librarianship, we are open. Be willing to change, be willing to pick up new skills. I can tell you over the past 12 years, the skills that I have picked up are phenomenal. They're great to my career. So I started out in the public library. I wasn't a librarian when I started the public library. I brought to librarianship my skill set from youth development. So my career started off working in nonprofit agencies, various nonprofits throughout New York City. But it was when I was working at Harlem Children's Zone that I actually called attention to other people to say, wait, do you want to be a librarian? Because I also had a part-time job at the Human Bookstore here in Harlem, New York. So when I started in public librarianship, I went in as a non-professional. I was hired as a full-time youth counselor. And in that role, I opened up the very first teen library that didn't have any books in Queens Public Libraries. And this was back in 2000. I'm not going to tell my age. No, it was back in 2008. So I've been around for a minute and I got to see the evolution that happened. So while I was working in the public library, I really, really was introduced to grit, because grit for us means that what is it that we're doing that we're passionate about, that no matter what happens, any struggles, any naysayers, anyone telling you no, you can't do this, that's when I learned, because it seems as though everything that I had known from youth development, I wanted to do different things in the public library. I was told, met with that, no, you can't do this. No, that's not going to work. No, you can't approach the kids that way. Because I have the model of meeting kids where they are and helping them get to where we need them to go. I don't know anybody else feel that way about working with kids. Give me a one in the chat that you feel like you want to meet the kids where they are, but we want to help them to get to where we need them to go. That's all about research. So then, after working at Queens Public Library for, say, about 8 years, I was always into academic libraries. So I have a second master's And that master's is from NYU in philanthropy and fundraising. And I'm a geek. I love Bope's library. So I will always be at Bope's, hanging out with the librarians, doing my research. And I was like, ooh, I think I want to go into academic librarianship. So I go back. I started talking to a couple of my past professors, and I said, I really want to make this transition from public librarianship into academic librarianship. Well, I was met with a flurry of no's. Everyone's like, oh, you can't do it. Public librarians don't have the skill that you need to be in an academic library. And I'm like, why? We deal with the public and public librarians. You would think that public librarians would be was sought out to become an academic librarian because we know how to deal with the public. We deal with everything in public librarianship, from homelessness to just you name it, we have dealt with it. Youth, gangs, all of that you deal with in public librarianship. So I was like, nope, I'm not taking no. I believe in myself. It's that belief that I have. And so grit and resiliency, as you saw in my presentation, it talked about they are listed as two different entities. However, they are interchangeable. And grit for me is that attribute that you had to deal with, that prolonged dedication to rebound from setbacks, to rebound from anyone telling you no, you can't do it, and just persevering with your long-term goals. So becoming an academic librarian was a long-term goal for me at that moment. What happened? My grant writing skills, as our lady said last in the last presentation, she talked about having grant writing skills. It was my grant writing skills that I used my second master's in public librarianship that I honed at Queen's Library, like writing that. The most important thing in writing grants, remember this, is that your program description is key, it's essential. And so I honed writing program descriptions. So when I went to interview at various different academic libraries, that was a one question that everyone asked me about. So what are your grant writing skills? How much money have you got funded through grant writing? And so I was like, oh, okay, this is it. So I interviewed, and finally I interviewed for a position at the College of New Rochelle in Westchester County. And I was hired. Not only did I not get hired as an academic librarian, I got hired as the assistant dean to the library. So when someone tells you no and you've built up your grit muscle, you keep going and you keep going and you keep going and you keep going, because you will get that yes. Because why? That yes lives inside of you. So now here I am, 2022. I was told again, you can't become a school media specialist. Why can't I be a school media specialist? Well, you need to have this certification. You need to go to school and get this certificate. No, I live in the best state ever. No disrespect to anybody that don't live here in New York City, in New York State. But in our state, there are different types of certification that you can apply for. And they may be applicable in people here that are from around the country. Check your state. Check what state at. They may be something that your skill set that you already have from public librarianship that you can bring in and get granted a waiver where you can work towards getting that school media specialist certification if that's your end goal. This is my dream job. It is my becoming a school media specialist is my retirement job. I waited until my kids got older and they were out of high school to go work in schools. Personal reason, everyone does things for themselves personally. What I've learned over the years of working as a professional is that work should be all about who you are, what you bring to it, not the reverse. What work brings to your life is what you bring to your work. So now going back to how I became a school media specialist. So New York State has a certificate called a Certificate G. So underneath this certificate, what happens is that I was teaching as an adjunct while I was working in academic. I started teaching information literacy courses. So I've been teaching that course for now maybe over 6, 7 years now. I've taught that course. It was that caveat that if you were working in a college as an adjunct professor, you could, and you had more than 2 years of consecutive work, you could apply for a certificate G. What? They told me I couldn't become a school media specialist. That wasn't happening. I went, I filled it out, and I got the certificate G. I had a very successful first year, and it was a great thing for me. So I'm going to move on to my next slide. So that's who I am. Public librarian, academic, school media specialist. And I'm so excited that I'm a librarian. So last night, or last week, before I started, I wanted to talk more about grit. And so with grit, we know that Angela Duckworth from the University of Pennsylvania has come up with all these great terms, and she has a lot of great research on grit and what's the importance of grit and having grit in your life. I advise everyone do a screenshot. Casey can post this link later. Then maybe to go in, but go and take this grit scale. It was interesting because I did this last week in preparation for this, and my grit score is 4.5. So I rated in between the 90th and the 99th percentile of other users who have taken this test. So my grit score is up there. And why is my grit score up there? Is because I made it part of my profession that I was going to utilize my abilities, my experiences, and my life goals and make it become my path and let this be my grit. And so my grit becomes very important to me because it's my self-control and it's honoring myself, right? And that's what we want to do. We want to honor ourselves. And so that's what grit has given me. And I hope that with me doing that, I've translated some of this grit. I don't have any demographics, right? Any information right now, but I have seen things that I've done with the students that I've worked with in my first year that they're starting to understand grit and resiliency. And even because I have this grit, I must say, is my principal. It came to her attention. She watched me for the whole year. So we actually have college level courses at my high school in Brooklyn. And one of the courses that I'll be monitoring this term is this course that the University of Pennsylvania have out on grit and resiliency. So look, it just comes full circle. Yeah, when you call attention and the work that you do is recognized. So here we go. What is grit? Angela Duckworth posited as grit has having your passion, perseverance, and for your long-term goals. Always think about it. Be passionate, but you got to persevere and never give up on what your goals are. So another way that she says to think about grit is to consider what grit is not, right? Grit is not about talent. So don't let anybody fool you that they have multiple degrees and they're very talented. Grit is not that, right? Talent can be taught. Grit comes from within. Grit is not about luck. So if you have a four-leaf clover, like, yep, I'm lucky. No, I'm not lucky. When people tell me that, I tell them I'm not lucky. It's that I know how to persevere. Grit isn't how intensely for the moment you want something. You can't just say, "Oh, I want to go buy those Manolo Blahnik shoes," or "I want to go get the latest coat that's out there," and that's an instant thing. That's instant gratification. Grit, what I've used to transition from public to academic to now school media specialist, is about knowing yourself, pushing yourself out there, and never giving up, and never letting no be the final word for you, because no is not final. Remember that. No is not final. So this is what grit is defined as. So with my grit, for my first, I had a rock star first year. I must say it's been a rock star year. These are two of my bulletin boards. Because I didn't take school media specialist route, so basically I didn't have a practicum. I learned how to do bulletin boards on my own. And so these are two of my bulletin boards that I really felt that was really highlighted what my work was. This is the middle of the school year. And this one is branch out into 2022. It was for the new year. Hey, we all love Pinterest. I'm on Pinterest. And I thank my fellow school librarians that are out there that are doing the thing, that provide the information in the Facebook groups. Because again, believing in myself, I had to go out and do some self-education. And like all things, everything is not taught to you in the classroom. You need to get out there and do the work in order to build up your skills. And so these were one of the ones, and this branch out into 2022, it was just telling students about different types, different genres they could read and getting them in preparation for Black History Month. And the other one was for Christmas. It was like sliding into winter reading with a good book. So it was for me to get kids to want to go and read books. And what I actually did was have students in my school, they actually wrote book reviews on books that they read. And I posted those on the bulletin board with a picture of the book, as you can see, and then the students' review. That got other students interested who never came into the library to come into the library and say, hey, I saw that book and I want to know, can I get that, check that book out? Or do you have other books that's like that? So grit, again, me knowing, persevering, not taking no for an answer. Here are two young men that were in the library that would just come and play board games, or they didn't want to read. New York State City, we have thing about getting permission. So since one young man, I had to look through my archives and find a picture of someone that didn't have their face, but I wanted to show that they were actually in the library reading. If you notice, my shelves a little minimal there, but it's okay because this was the beginning of the school year. As I said, my grant writing skills kicked in for me. I wrote a grant, an opening day grant. New York City Department of Libraries had a grant for us, and I wrote the grant. And I'm happy to say that it was for $200,000, and my shelves are stacked now. I don't have images of that in this PowerPoint, but the shelves are stacked now. But these two young men didn't want to read. And I kept saying, well, try this. Let's read a short story. Let's do that. Don't give up. Both of them started checking out books. By the end of the year, they were like my number one students for checking out books. So again, it's me persevering and letting them know, listen, we're not going to give up. We're going to try this. If you don't like that book, okay, you read the first 5 pages, you didn't like it, let's try a new book. So I ended up using a lot of high interest, low readability books with them, or short stories, and then I got them into reading books that were long lived. All right. So we always got to talk about our little small wins. Always, 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 when you're building that grit muscle for yourself, celebrate your small wins. Don't wait for the grandiose wins, because then that will give you a setback, because those grandiose wins don't come as frequently as your small wins. So one of my small wins was I actually had an opportunity to build a team of young people who I called my student ambassadors. They were my library squad kids, and celebrated that they came on board with me being first year in the school. Those young people worked with me in my high school, and we had a fantastic year. They even started creating the bulletin boards for me. They started doing the book displays for me. They even said, okay, get a cricket machine, Miss Eccles. Let's get a cricket machine. So I had this one young lady. She loved the cricket machine. She just started doing great designs with it, and we just decorate the library more and more. So I want to tell you that, little pieces, as you see Oprah with the big amount, little pieces make big progress. It is so, so true. Celebrate your small wins. That helps boost your confidence. That helps build your grit. That's how you win. That's how you build that grit muscle. So you also need an accountability partner. I don't know about you people out there, all of us out here. I don't know about you guys, but I have accountability partners, not one partner, not two. I think I have about 4 people in my life that I can call on. And Casey is one of them that I say, all right, I need you to hold me accountable for this. I'm thinking about doing this. And my accountability partners, they help keep my grit going. So like building a grit muscle is one thing, but you got to keep it fueled. You got to keep it going. So get those accountability partners. So one graphic here for you says a grit mind strengthens all of your strengths. So like as the old saying goes, like-minded individuals, what happens? They fuel each other. And so grit, if you look at it as being a noun, is possessing that indomitable spirit, having a drive for achievement, regardless of your upbringing or your situation, earning success in the trenches through hard work. So for me, that definition I hold so greatly to my heart, because I was born and raised in East New York, Brooklyn. My community was doomed from the end. That was a prisoner pipeline. They say it started in third grade. Out in East New York, it really started in kindergarten. They really marginalized you in kindergarten. And it is a desolate, isolated neighborhood. Even now, they have a show coming out about the precinct called East New York, and it says place in the precinct. Not to segue from this presentation, but the 75th precinct when I grew up in East New York was notorious for gangs. The precinct, the cops were gangbangers. So that goes to show you how devastated the community that I grew up in. But look at me now. I'm here. I'm able to have my fortitude and push through no matter what. And so that's what I'm bringing into my school. So talking about this, I wrote another grant that was funded, and it was a neighborhood grant. And I wrote that grant not even for the library, but for the young men in my school, because I noticed when I used to cover lunch periods that the young men in our school would want to walk the hallways. They were very despondent. They weren't into this. And so a lot of people wanted to attribute it to we're coming out of COVID, kids are just getting back into school. But I saw something a little further with these young men. I knew the community. I started asking them what community that they resided in, and a lot of them would tell me what community they resided in. And then I met like 4 young men that lived in East New York, Brooklyn, and they would tell me about the things that were happening, still happening out in East New York. And then when I told them I was born and raised in East New York, the young men would look at me like, you don't look like most of the women that live in East New York. You mean to tell me you were, yes, I was born and raised in East New York, but you know what got me through it is my grit. The fact that I was resilient, the fact that I persevered. And so if I can leave anybody here today in this presentation with that, is that find a way to develop your grit muscle. It will turn your no's into yeses, and then you'll be able to move on. So tools for empowerment. One of my tools that I have is a journal. I have several journals, But one of my most important journal is my work journal. So work journaling differs a little bit from your profession, from your personal journaling. And why it differs is that in your work journal, you have an opportunity to write down your successes, your failures, how the meeting went, how you responded in the meeting, how you respond to your coworkers, how you responded to kids. In that journal, you get a chance to write all those things down, and then you could go back and read it, and then you can set a new day in your journal. So there's another workshop. You can email me. I'm newbie to social media. I want to tell you first and foremost, you're not gonna find me on Twitter, but I'm getting there. Putting together a Twitter account. I feel like now is the time. I just never really embraced social media like that because I was just so busy working and going to school and raising my kids. So now I'm going to get embark upon social media. But for now, you have my email address at the end of the presentation if you have any questions about how I actually structured my work journal. Because again, my work journal differs from my personal journal. And that's because I want to highlight, I want to see the things that's going on in my day to day with my work life. So here's my first year improvements. I do have a slide of my books. So this would be my left, but probably be your right. You see, this is our seating area, and the shelves are still a little empty. But thanks to the grant, if you look by the television, the shelves are stacked. I'm very happy and very fortunate to have received that grant and to bring this 14,635 books, brand new books, to the students in my school at the Science Skills Center High School in Brooklyn. So I'm very happy about that. And another first year improvements is that when another grant came out for LGBTQ and social emotional learning, but it was all with ebooks, I applied for that and I received that grant, and that gave us $5,000 in ebooks. And the reason I did that is that I noticed that my school had a huge population. We have a rainbow club. And so we have a lot of students who are self-identifying with their gender. Going, a lot of them had questions. But before I went to apply for the grant, I said, let me check our Sora account and see what books the students in my school are reading, because you don't know what the students are reading unless you go run a report for the ebooks. The number one book in March in my school that had been checked out 15 times was Felix Never After. That raised to my attention that was proof for me that I needed to pursue that grant and to write the grant and talk about the Rainbow Club at my school. The kids were excited when I told them at the end of the school year that we had this grant and that there were a multitude of books in there for them to read over the summer. So hopefully when I go back in September, I'll check the stats again and I'll see what exactly happened and see how many students were actually reading any books through that. So again, it's that grit. I cannot talk about grit and resiliency so much. It means a lot to me because I know that without having my grit, I wouldn't be here before you today. I wouldn't have had the opportunities that I've had because I pushed myself, but I also set my goals, and the goals were to see where I need to go. How was I going to get there? So I knew the end goal. I always knew that I was going to become a school media specialist. Why? Because when I was working in the nonprofit at Harlem Children's Zone, they had me in the library as a reading specialist, but they saw that I loved books so much that then they turned me into the unofficial librarian without having gone to pursue my MLS. So life has a way of bringing us back around to where we need to be. So I've always knew that that's where I wanted to go. But when I was in school pursuing my MLS, I didn't want to switch over to school media specialist at that time because it was meant I spent the extra year in school, but also it was during a time where in my personal life, it was not feasible. My mom was sick, my daughter was sick, so I had a lot of things going on. I just wanted to hurry up and finish school. So I put that on the back burner, but I've always worked towards building skills that would help me get there. So it's like I said, and I've been saying this throughout this presentation, it is our grit and our resiliency that will get us there. But it's also understanding who you are as an individual and know your limits. I can't say this enough. Understand yourself and know your limits. So that was the first year improvements at my school. I'm so excited for year two. I don't know what it's going to bring for me, but I know that it's going to be greatness because I know that whatever challenges that I'm going to get faced with, I'm going to meet them and I'm going to persevere through them. So here are two references that I have for you. The links are here. These are articles, and one is Angela Duckworth and the research on grit, and it was on American Radio Works. And then the other one is How True is Grit? And these are for individuals who are working in the high school. I highly recommend reading this article because it will help you to empower your students. It will help you. This article breaks down so many different things about it. So it's assessing the relation to high school and college students' personality characteristics that they can understand self-regulation, where they can become engaged and then they can achieve. So for those students that are in the prison, the pipeline school districts, this article gives you so many tools in it. You can literally take and break down this article by the introduction, read the methods, read the discussion, and read the further discussions. Read the get everything from this article. I highly recommend it. And then if you're still interested in learning more about grit, the University of Pennsylvania, this is not a tag for the University of Pennsylvania, but hey, if you want me to be a spokesperson on that high school course, here I am. Um, they have a high school course that if your school offers high school credit, it's an elective that talks about building grit with your students. So I saved more time on the back end. I've noticed the chat is going. So I've saved a lot of time on the back end for questions. So thank you, everyone, for being here on a Saturday. Thank you to Casey Boyd for putting together this great professional development for our community. And here is my contact, my email. Trust me, next month, September, I will be on social media. I promise. Thank you.
I'm gonna hold you to it. Gonna hold you to it. Okay, so we have a couple of minutes because we started 3 minutes late. Any questions or any comments that you would like for me to read to um, Sandra Michelle? Just let me know. Just put it in the chat.
Oh, Holly, thank you. You don't have to be me when you grow up. Just reach out to me. I'll give you some of the articles that I've read that got me to where I am today.
A lot of great presentations, very inspirational. We need it this year. We definitely need this. A lot of thank yous, very inspiring.
She told me get on social media, girl. I will. I promise.
You
I'm
need
get.
to.
I
Yeah.
got a new iPad. I'm gonna get on social media. No excuses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's Holly. Get on social media.
Yep.
Here's a question for you from
Yes.
Maria. How do you see students' grit impacted post COVID?
That's a great question. A lot of students post COVID will have they may feel that they don't have any more left because of some of them may have lost parents, some of them have a grandparent. There's a lot of loss that has happened over the last 2.5 years. So you would have to think about asking them. What I would do is ask the student, like, what is it that you want to see yourself a year from now? Like I said, small wins are better than the grandiose wins. So I would start with a small win. And even if it's like improving my English grade. So what does that look like for you? That's a small win, building towards their long term goal.
That's right. Dawn asked the question, what is a good grant to start with for someone new to writing them?
A grant writing course or a grant to apply for?
The way I'm reading this, I think it's
Writing them.
yeah, what type of grant what should you seek out first? Or if you want to correct me, Dawn, please do so in the chat.
Yeah. I would say apply for Dollar General if
Mm,
you have a Dollar General in your area, because Dollar General grants are much easier. They don't come with a lot of
yes,
the back end reporting, or any grants that are in your local community from the community board, community trust funds, foundations. They are usually given to schools. But again, I must preface this: check with your school district first, because some school districts have grant writers, and you don't want to be going after a $15,000 grant when your school district is going after a $500,000 grant.
very true. And look at the nice comment on the
She
page
said,
from Jennifer.
Raphael, no, ma'am, no, ma'am, no, ma'am. I am former president of NYBLC. I've done enough for that. I am president of Me Find Me. I'm so sorry.
Donors, Donna's saying donors to choose grants are easy to apply
Yes.
for as well. Yes, they are.
Oh, I left that out. I didn't want to get on here and seem like I wanted to be inspirational, not braggadocious. But my first year as a school library, I wrote 11 successful donors choose, all funded within maybe the same day or within the same week. I would say that your network equals your net worth. And I take advantage of when they offer the 50% or the double funding. I will get on the phone and call the little old ladies that I know that love me and say, "Hey, do you have $10 to put up here on my donors choose?" Because they're matching it. Do you have $15? They're matching it, and that's how I work donors choose. But I had 11, so you can look me up. Sandra Eccles under the Science Skills Center High School. Donors Choose now allows you to copy, if you're a new teacher, to copy someone else's Donors Choose. And you could just copy it and submit it up there for your school, tweak the school description, but all of the merchandise that was purchased on each one of those donors shoes are there, and also the catchy titles that I have. Like I
Yeah.
have one that's from board games to books, and we were looking at finance books. So I had bought Monopoly. I
Mhm.
bought a game by Dave Ramsey called Act Your Wage, and then I bought books to supplement that about the stock market. So have at it. Look at my donors shoes, and if you see anything up there, feel free to copy it.
Last question. Can you please repeat the grit course availability at UPenn? My school
I,
offers an early college high school program. And this is something we can also include
you
on
need
your
to email
page.
me for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, email me for that because I don't want to give you the wrong name. I want to give you the correct name of the course, and I'm not logged into my DOE email right now. Yes, Donna,
Um,
a catchy title is very important. Donna works in my school district. Donna Gray, thank you, Donna, for all your love and support too. I have to say this in public for you. Yeah, use alliterations, and Donna loves my donors choose topics. She always comments on them.
and I placed Sandra Michelle's email in the chat. So if you'd like to email her, and we'll also put this on the the PD's Google sites. I keep saying conference,
And I
but I guess we
will,
can't call
yeah,
it that.
it is a conference. It's not you, Casey. Speak it into existence. Next year we may be in person with you on a weekend. I'm gonna speak that into existence. We'll be in Baltimore for the weekend at the harbor. Yes. Who's with me? Type it in the chat. Who wants Casey to bring this live and in person next year? Type it in the chat for me. Give me a one if you agree with me. A two, like, oh, you might not be too much. You might be conferenced out. But I think Casey needs to do this as a weekend conference for us back to school. Donna says it's a conference. Miss Ortiz is a conference. Holly said, let's go. Hey, you got ambassadors, Casey. Look at this.
Okay,
Look at all the
ambassadors.
ambassadors. Look at all the ambassadors. Holly gave you a whole one all the way down. Look at that. You could do this, Casey.
We'll see. But look, you know what? But for right now, we want to
Yes.
say thank you so much for dropping all these dimes,
Thank you
all
for
these
having
knowledge,
me.
these jewels. Because I'm telling you, this was really good. I know you, and you said some things to me in this presentation that made me stop and think. And I said, I need to go about it this way instead. So thank you very much. And right now, we are headed into our lunch period. So we're going to start today. I hope you're okay if we cut our lunch period by 6 minutes, but we are going to be on break from uh, from 1:36 until 2 p.m. We're going to start back up at 2 p.m. So we will see you guys in about 25 minutes, 24 minutes, and we'll see you a little later. All right. Okay. Bye bye now.